one. We are on a very warm welcome to another episode of Fauza's Diary. It's my sincere hope that you are doing really well despite the chaos in the world. And if you are looking for something inspiring, motivating, and captivating, then you have stumbled upon the right show. That's the beauty about my diaries. They inspire us, they encourage us, but also they make us think and see what else is out there and what really can we do, especially in this season that we are in. Joining me all the way from United Kingdom, London, is my sister friend, Seema, Dhanak. She is the founder of V2 Empowerment. Welcome, Seema. Welcome to my house.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Seema. So what does V2 Empowerment stands for those who are just joining us and they don't know what the organization is all about?
Right. So V2S Empowerment, basically it stands for Victim to Survivor Empowerment. We started V2S Empowerment between myself, my husband, and actually even my son, who's 19 years old, is actually actively involved in this as well.
Oh.
This empowerment was started to create awareness around the subject of domestic abuse. We are not gender specific, we're not culture specific, we're not religion, caste, creed, or color specific either. We as public speak and campaign for prevention of domestic abuse. We create awareness around the subject. Mm-hmm. A lot of work has been cultural, although we don't choose to be culturally specific. Being from an Asian background myself, one of our aims is to dispel some of the Asian cultural myths around domestic abuse. Mm. So V2S Empowerment, my background is that I have 15 years of working experience of working with families that became homeless as a result of domestic abuse. Oh. And that is where my knowledge of what the infrastructure in the UK came from in terms of what support services there are. It's how I learned about the psychology of domestic abuse in terms of what a victim goes through, what a perpetrator is thinking. And it's where V2S Empowerment was born from. It was that need to create the awareness in an environment that wasn't specifically just targeting those people who were dependent on benefits or welfare. It was women like you and I, it was men like my husband, and potentially even people like my son. So wow. Like I said, we're not gender specific or anything. We seek to create awareness, and we seek to empower people, everyday people like you and I, to mm-hmm. support a victim of domestic abuse and understand what the services are in this country, so that a victim of abuse can get help.
Okay, wow, that is very powerful, Seema, and it's I think it's an amazing platform organization, because it takes someone who has a heart of others to do what you are doing. But I'm just curious to hear, how have you been managing V2 in this current season that we are in, looking at, families have been locked down together, which is something that in the past years that you could actually sort of, escape the other pass, escape a bit and, get your own breathe and then come back. But now suddenly we are all in the same room 24/7. So how is this season impacting, your organization, and what kind of actions have you taken to not rather for you, but for the organization to cope with the situation?
So I still work full time in the housing sector. So then, 9 to 5, I'm doing that. And then in between, so when I've got my lunch hour or after work, the increase that I've seen in the number of calls that we're getting from individuals suffering with domestic abuse has been phenomenal. The leading charities in the UK have seen as much as a 700% to 800% increase.
Wow.
Yeah, and even I've seen a massive increase in the number of women and men coming forward stating that they're suffering with domestic abuse. And so my work has greatly increased. What we have been doing is I've taken to social media interviews with amazing, platforms like yourself, and using my own platforms and various others to talk about the subject of domestic abuse, the impact that the pandemic is having on families during this time, and also really just reiterating government messages that you're not alone in this. You don't have to stay in an abusive relationship during lockdown. Absolutely. Provisions have been made by refuges, provisions have been made by local authorities. Yes, the refuges are very full at the moment. I respect that and I appreciate that. But local authorities are providing accommodation for anyone who is trying to leave an abusive partner, and that is irrespective of your immigration status as well. So for me, the most important thing is to get those key messages out there. And as a result of doing all the social media work, the influx of calls that I have had to say that, look, I'm suffering with domestic abuse, I don't know where to start. So, and it's a case of me saying, right, okay, what do you want as an outcome from this? Are you ready to leave? Do you want someone to help counsel the relationship so that there isn't any abuse, but you still want to stay together? Is it safe for you to stay together? Do you need police involvement? Much of my work is centered and focused around the outcomes that a victim of abuse is looking for. So then we then signposting and guidance as to, okay, this is now where you can get the help from. One of the things that we don't, in fact, two things that we don't do at V2S Empowerment, we don't get involved in interventions. You don't know what you're getting yourself into when you start to look at interventions with an abusive partner of somebody. You don't know what they're capable of. So I never recommend anybody gets involved in an intervention.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. As somebody who's worked for local authorities, I know I have I know that professional bodies like the police and social services and local authorities have an information sharing agreement with the police. But everyday people like you and I, we do not have that information sharing agreement.
That's true.
So to safeguard yourself, your job is to signpost and provide emotional support. Okay. It isn't to do an intervention. And the second thing that we don't believe in is actually taking the steps for them, because ultimately calling a solicitor to file for a divorce or contacting the police or a refuge service to find safe accommodation, contacting somebody for relationship counselling or emotional counselling for themselves are all things that, if I say to you that, look, these are the resources, I've given you all of the contact numbers, the websites, please read up on it. If you've got any questions or any reservations before you contact these, come back to me. But I want you to empower yourself and really pick up the phone and actually make these phone calls yourself. And if you can't do it yourself, then speak to a family member if it's not safe for you to do that. We've also been talking a lot about discreet ways of going out and getting help, because like you say, people are in lockdown. When an individual is in an abusive relationship, they're constantly being monitored, they're constantly being watched, and so it can make it hard to pick up the phone. The respite that individuals had before going to the gym, going to work, going to drop your children to school, it's all gone.
So the only thing freedom is taken now, isn't it? We've seen that the freedom that we used to have, it's no longer there anymore.
Yeah. So in order to make use of what is available, here in the UK, we had a rule for a little while where only one person per household was allowed to go shopping and into the grocery market. So what I would say is that if it's your partner who goes out to do the grocery shopping, that is your time to make your phone calls.
Okay, so when he leaves, you sort out yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And consciously make the effort to do that. If it's you who's responsible for going out, then you've hit a golden nugget there. Because what you can do is you can go to a pharmacist or a supermarket and say, look, I'm suffering with domestic abuse. Please, may I use your phone?
Right.
And could you give me some privacy to make these phone calls? This has worked phenomenally well for those people who have been able to get out, because they've been able to use resources that were scarcely available during lockdown to get themselves out of these abusive situations. So much of my work has been about emotional support, signposting, and empowering.
Wow, that's quite a lot, Seema. It's I'm really, I think, let me just applaud you for doing that, because like I said in the beginning, you know, it takes someone who has a heart, you know, a humility, you know, I don't know how to put it all together, but it's something that you must have a love for other people for you actually to do the thing that you're doing. So I think you've talked a bit about the needs. I was just curious to hear the needs that, because I would want to think that every individual would have different needs that they need. So Seema, what do you think will be the needs for you know, for the men and women, you know, who are in this kind of relationships?
Do you mean sort of in the present climate or going forward? I can answer both. I mean, if we're looking at the present climate where some parts of the world are still very much in lockdown, I think the needs are is the awareness more than anything. I think the needs are for people like you and I to phone up our sisters and our brothers and just check in on them and make sure they're okay. I think the need is also to take a proactive approach rather than a reactive one. So you don't necessarily have to say to somebody, look, I think you're suffering domestic abuse, talk to me. I think it's more a case of saying, you know what, I'm worried about you. Is there something you'd like to talk to me about? And give them the opportunity to open up. What you're doing is you're providing a safe and non-judgmental space for them to come to you in their own time. They might not do it straight away, but actually if you continue to persevere and just say, look, you know what, I'm still worried about you. You're not the same as you were before. You know, if there's anything that you'd like to talk about, I'm here. I'm here to listen. I won't judge you. Those words can be godsend, you know, to somebody whose confidence has been knocked as a result of domestic abuse. So that, I think, is the immediate need in terms of what we can all do to
Okay. I lost you there, Seema. Are you there? Hello, Seema.
reduce the impact of hello? Yep,
Yes,
I can hear you.
Sorry, yeah, I had lost you. We had a technical problem.
So I think going but we're back on board.
Yes.
But I think in terms of going forward, coming out of lockdown, I urge anybody who is suffering with domestic abuse to really think proactively about getting help. And that help can be in the form of counselling to help you get clarity on your situation. It can be in the form of getting help from the police if you're in immediate danger. It can be help in the form of legal advice to help you put down a divorce settlement together. Whatever it is you need, think about what you want as your outcome and how you are going to get there. And I think that is the need for the future.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Seema. I really hope that you know, the viewers, those who are listening us and watching even later, that they will be able really to have the courage to step out and really, if they really need. It's not easy to ask for help, you know, but I think sometimes instead of, you know, being in such an environment, I think it's okay to say that I'm not okay. So please, don't be trapped.
And also I think victims as well. I mean, you know, we say that for, you know, it's hard for anyone suffering with domestic abuse, but I think for men it's even harder.
Yeah.
You know, because there's such a stigma attached. They suffer the most amount of mental health. The suicide rates for men in the UK are astronomical, and usually it is something related to domestic abuse, poor mental health, or homelessness even.
And that's something really powerful, Seema, because most of the time we only talk about the women empowerment, woman this, woman. But I feel like, you know, the boy child has been, you know, has been forgotten. The boy child, hey boy child, we are here advocating for you as well. And I love what you're saying, because I think we think that men, they don't need this kind of support? Or I think it's that the way we generalize think that men, they're always okay, they don't cry, but they do have feelings as well, because they're human beings.
And also, men have a really important role to play in the prevention of domestic abuse, not just from the point of view that they may be a victim, but also the messages that they're putting out to their own peers. So if somebody makes a misogynistic joke about their partner, and, you know, keeping them under the thumb or keeping them controlled or whatever, it is the responsibility of our brothers and our sons to actually really put that message forward and say, no, this isn't acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
You should way about your partner. You should be treating your partner with more respect. And actually, if we're willing to get, you know, the men in our society, the men in our family, and those that are close to us, to start talking about domestic abuse as much as women do, then actually I think it will start to change the perception of men who A, are suffering, or B, could be perpetrators. So they do have an important role to play in that. I think that's something that I've learned from having my son and my husband involved in. Yeah.
That's amazing, Seema. Do you think there will be a big change? I mean, listening to you, there is quite a lot of need. I think already that, you know, that at the moment, there is so much happening, but I'm just curious to see if V2 will have, you know, bigger change when the corona is contained.
I think so. I think there needs to be a huge shift in the way domestic abuse is responded to. And we're waiting for coronavirus to ease and for the lockdown to ease, but our ambition is to change the way society responds to domestic abuse. We want to change it culturally, so we want to look at cultural barriers that stop people from coming forward and saying that they're victims of domestic abuse, but also those cultures that encourage patriarchal and abusive behaviors. We want to stamp those behaviors out. So we want to change the way we respond culturally. We want to change the way domestic abuse is responded socially as well. We want to be able to make domestic abuse a subject that is no longer a taboo. We should be able to talk about it as much as we talk about, women talk about makeup and clothes and fashion and cooking, and, you know, men talk about whatever their usual, you know, things are. And actually, of course, and although those are actually quite very much gender stereotypes, and both should be able to talk about those equally as each other, let's make domestic abuse one of those subjects too. We talk about, you know, wars going on around the world. We're talking about the pandemic and ill health, but we're not talking about abuse, and we want to remove the taboos socially for that. Professionally, we want industries to come forward and have domestic violence policies, so that if they've got somebody who in their organization who is a victim of domestic abuse, that their policy is conducive to their well-being. And I strongly believe that if you look after your employees will
look after you.
Absolutely. And so having a domestic abuse policy is part of that. So we want to be able to provide corporate training on that.
Okay.
Equally, if there is perpetrators of domestic abuse who perhaps don't realize that actually their behavior is abusive, then there is counseling, there is all sorts of therapy. Those behavioral patterns, I do believe, can be worked on. And this, again, is a role for organizations to be able to provide for their employees. So if you've got somebody who comes in and says, my partner has left me, I made a mistake, I lifted a finger on them. Well, actually, okay, can we work with you? Can we
talk about it?
Exactly. And can we work out which behaviors are appropriate and which aren't, and really begin to work on reversing and changing those behaviors?
Wow. I'm wondering though, do you think that sometimes people who are abusing other people, they don't know that that's being abusive?
Yes, because the domestic abuse is very much sometimes a case of learned behaviors. It's one of those things where they have seen their parents be abusive. It's you know, like, it's ingrained in them because it's how they've seen their role models grow up.
It's like it goes from generation to generation. And then what I'm teaching my son, how my son sees me and his dad, you know, behave and treat each other, then that's what he's gonna learn, and he would think that this is okay. And
Yeah.
then he will carry on doing the same, and then he will teach the
Is
next
it?
generation.
Exactly. So,
Wow.
and having worked in local authorities for 15 years, I look at a lot of child protection plans, and you look at the chronology of somebody who perhaps has been a victim of domestic abuse or is a perpetrator of domestic abuse. And there is a pattern there where it is learned behavior. And I think, you know, again, sort of culturally as well, where certain types of patriarchal or misogynistic behavior has been made, you know, sort of acceptable to the point where even females are supporting that type of behavior. It's actually, you know, like, I don't think anyone, the same way that no one is born a racist, no one is born abusive either. Okay,
I
these
love
are,
that.
yeah, so, you know, like, so the same way
So it's an
that
acquired act.
it
Shall I put
is,
it in that way? Because, yeah.
yeah.
And if you can learn to be abusive, you can learn to be a good person as well, isn't it? It's like what bullies
Absolutely.
do. They think it's okay to be bullying each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But the person has to be willing to learn.
Yeah, that's the other thing, because you cannot force that person to, you know, to be open-minded, to take in,
Yeah.
you know, different
Yeah.
behaviors as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. The if you have somebody, and you know, lots of social services around the UK have got programs for people who have got abusive traits, therapy, and, you know, like, I do believe that if you can look within and realize where your own faults lie and actually actively try to work on those, then actually those abusive behaviors can be changed. The same way that if we look at our diet and think, actually, you know what, my diet is quite poor, I need to eat healthier, you actively are consciously making a decision to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think abusive behaviors, if we accept that with ourselves that there is an abusive trait, that we are being perhaps emotionally abused towards our partner, then there is scope for work to be done to reverse and change those behaviors.
Wow. Okay. So Seema, is there a specific strategy that you are putting in place then for all these things that you've been that you are sharing with me?
So my specific strategy is to continue training and working with individuals. I provide a signposting and advice service free of charge. That is literally for victims of abuse to come forward, tell me their story, tell me what they want as an outcome, so we can work towards getting them to that outcome, or help them get towards that outcome. So that's one thing that we will continue to do. Going forward, our strategy is to provide workshops on creating awareness on the subject of domestic abuse, on creating awareness on what services are available in the UK, and we intend to give people case studies so that they can really, you know, master looking at a situation and identifying the types of abuse and identifying what services they could feed these victims of abuse into so that they can get help. And my strategy is very much to be the bridge between a victim of abuse and professional services, because there's a huge gap between two. People fear professional services, so my job is to dispel those fears and be the bridge between the two.
Oh, bless your beautiful soul. Really, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you, because I think it is a blessing to be in a good marriages, really, whether, you know, you are the man or the woman, independent who is being affected, really, because like you said, you know, domestic violence has nothing to do with only men mistreating women. It's also the opposite and vice versa. What would be your advice, Seema, for a man and a woman who is in, or even teenagers? Sometimes they get into relationships that really gets messed up. I mean, let's talk about that too. It's not even about the married men, but, you know, you teenagers.
It's
It's
any
the same,
relationship.
isn't it?
it isn't even intimate relationships, it's also any relationship. Domestic abuse in the UK is also defined as violence between relatives, parents and their children, two siblings, extended families, grandparents, and uncles, especially when you're looking at it from a cultural angle. You know, there are issues of honor-based violence and forced marriages, female genital mutilation. Often those things are not that they're not implicated by because other they're implement mother of family. So it's important to, my advice is, do not be ashamed. It is not your fault.
Okay.
If you're suffered with
Seema, I've lost you there.
I think the person who ashamed is the person than the victim. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi,
now.
can you hear me?
I have lost you.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure how far we got, but what I will say is that if you're a victim of abuse, do not suffer in silence. It is not your shame to be holding within. You need to come out and talk about the abuse that you're suffering so you can get the correct amount of help. If you've been a victim of abuse in the past and you're still suffering some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder as a result, please get help so that you can learn to live a quality life going forward. Nobody needs to stay in an abusive relationships. And also, if you're a perpetrator and there is an ounce of guilt within you and you feel that actually my behavior needs to be worked on and you would like help, then there is help for you as well. So there is no need for anyone to suffer in silence.
Wow. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps listening, I'm telling you. And my prayer is that anyone who will be listening and watching, really, that they will be encouraged. If you're in abusive homes, abusive, whatever it is, whether it's your grandparents, you know, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your wife, your husband, whatever, wherever you don't feel safe, as Seema says, don't isolate yourself. And you don't need to be ashamed. It's not your shame to carry. It's not yours. Reach out. Don't be in there stuck in between the walls and you're not happy, you're struggling. Thank you so much, Seema. Thank you very much for this. I really hope that it will empower people to stand up for themselves, and those people who are mistreating others, that they will also come out and, you know, get some help if they need to. But like you say, you cannot force someone to change their behavior because that's a choice and decision that they have to take.
Yeah,
so
it is. You have to recognize that. As a final thought, what I would like to say is that staying in a relationship that is abusive is painful. The process of leaving is sometimes even more painful. But please find the courage within you to really turn that pain into power.
You have the power. Thank you so much, Seema. Thank you so much, Seema, and thank you for joining me. Thank you to my viewers for tuning in to watch this. I would really love to encourage each one of you to share this conversation. You will just never know who might stumble it, who might need to watch, who might need help. And for you who is in an abusive relationship, like we've said already, you are not alone. Reach out. And for those people like us, like Seema, who, you know, like for example, Seema, she's doing her well best, you know, to help those who are in those kind of condition. Let us reach out, let us pick the phone, text someone, you know, just check on them. Isn't it, Seema? Just let's check on each other.
Absolutely.
That's
and do it proactively. You know, do it proactively, be compassionate, be kind, and always give them a safe, non-judgmental space for them to come and talk to you.
Thank you, Seema. Safe and a non-judgmental place for those people who they are in those kind of environment to be able to come and talk to you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to share and to subscribe. And I will see you guys soon with another inspiring diary. Stay safe.